How's it going, Rogues Gallery, and welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. Today we have our very first Monarch Hero deck tech featuring one of my favorite heroes, not just out of Monarch, but in the entire game, CHANE the Shadow Runeblade. This is my personal Blitz deck list, and this is kind of like an Eclipse deck, basically. It's kind of like a go-wide aggro-y deck with a little bit of Eclipse sprinkling in, so we can summon USUR the Soul Reaper. A really, really cool card, and I'm really stoked to do it. Before we get started with that, though, I do want to mention that today's video is brought to you by FAB DB, the premier Flesh and Blood deck building and database website. It's actually a website that I use personally to build my Flesh and Blood decks, just like the one featured in today's video. So if you do want a list to today's deck, I will have a link in the description down below, as well as a general link to FAB DB. If you're looking to pick up some Flesh and Blood cards and you'd like to support me, I highly recommend checking out my affiliate links with Channel Fireball, Fab Foundry, and Red Riot Games. All excellent folks, and you know, using my affiliate link and buying something from their stores goes to support me, and I greatly appreciate it. Red Riot is from Canada, so if you are, Canadian and you don't have to pay for those crazy international shippings, I definitely recommend them. Or if you'd like to support me directly, definitely check out my Patreon. I have a bunch of tiers there where I give like cards and booster packs back to you every single month, but any single tier will give you access to the Rogues Gallery, the official Red Zone Rogue community Discord. We talk about, card games, video games, all sorts of stuff over there. It's a good time, lots of good folks. So yeah, if you'd like to support me, definitely check out my Patreon. But let's get on with the deck tech today. So before we get started exactly with the deck tech, I do want to mention two quick things. I know I have a lot of stuff to mention. The first one is that this is not a budget build. This is not a budget build. I'm going full in, legendaries, majestics, all in. And the other thing I want to mention is that I don't know if the Eclipse version of this deck is like the most optimal version. I think actually like a non-Eclipse version of like an aggro go wide chain might be better, but I like Eclipse and I want to summon USUR. So we're going to talk about that as we like go through the deck tech, because I think you can just kind of like take out Eclipse and put something else in instead. And you might just be fine or better. But yeah, let's get on with the list, man. So CHANE, he's a Shadow Runeblade hero. Obviously this is the young version because we are playing a Blitz. 20 life and 4 hand size. He has a once per turn action of creating a Soul Shackle token, and then your next Runeblade or Shadow action this turn gains a Go Again. So that's action, not action card, and Runeblade or Shadow, which is fantastic. So basically he gives your next thing Go Again, but not generic stuff. Keep that in mind. It does not give generic stuff Go Again. Only Shadow and only Runeblade. And then what is a Soul Shackle? Well, it's actually a very important part to the deck too. So a Soul Shackle token says, it's an aura. It stays on the battlefield. And it says, at the beginning of your action phase, banish the top card of your deck. That's very important because a lot of the cards that we're playing in this deck, you can play from your banish zone. And we want to be careful not to do this too much, but we want to do it a decent amount. 5 is maybe the max that you want to have on the battlefield, otherwise you'll end up decking yourself. But this is a pretty aggressive build, and we wanna go hard. We wanna go hard. So that's CHANE, and that is the Soul Shackle. I did pull a rune chant aside because we will be using rune chants in this build of CHANE. Just not a ton of them. As well as we pulled an USUR aside. We'll talk about USUR a little bit later. But before we get to that, let's start talking about our equipment loadout. So I think the most interesting one is the weapons. I typically go with Galaxy Black. It's a very simple card, and it functions really, really well with CHANE. It's kind of his signature weapon. It says, once per turn action for a single resource attack. It has a single attack, which is kind of low, but if you played a card from your banner zone this turn, like I said, that's kind of like what our deck wants to do, it gains +2. If it hits, deal 1 arcane damage to that hero. So it's almost like a 4 damage attack for 1, which is really, really good. But that is only condition it, is that even a word? It depends on if you've actually played a card from your banner zone and if Galaxy Black hits. Regardless though, I think it's really, really good and a really, really aggressive option for this deck. Another really, really good option is a Reaping Blade. This is one of my favorite Runeblade weapons just in general. I think Reaping Blade is really, really good. So it's a Runeblade weapon. It has an attack of 3, once per turn action attack for a single resource. And it says, if a hero has more life than any other hero, that they can't gain life. This card is sweet. It's almost the same amount of attack as Galaxy Black, though Galaxy Black basically attacks for the same, attacking for 3. This one also attacks for 3, but Galaxy Black has an additional rider of if they take the damage, they take an additional arcane damage, whereas Reaping Blade does not. Reaping Blade is really, really good against opponents that you think are going to be running cards like Sigil of Solace, people who play cards that gain life and that kind of stuff. And since we're playing a very aggro deck, it's a good chance that they're going to have less life than us. So it's not that useful. I think it's more useful in a controlling style build, which is why I typically run Galaxy Black, but I think it's still a really good option. So I have it in my loadout. The other option that I like, but I haven't found much use of it yet, is Dread Scythe. So Dread Scythe is a good weapon. It does more damage on average than both of the other ones. However, it's a little bit trickier to use. It's almost like a combination of Reaping Blade and Galaxy Black. What Dread Scythe is, it says, once per turn action for 3 resources attack. It is a huge resource hog. It has an attack of 3, so just a base attack of 3, the same actually as Reaping Blade. But what does it do that, requires that extra 2 resources to make it, 3 resources? It says, whenever you attack with Dread Scythe, deal 1 arcane damage to the defending hero. So it just automatically deals 1 arcane damage to them. Pretty good. And then it says, a hero dealt damage by Dread Scythe can't gain life during their next action phase. So it also helps prevent your opponent from gaining life, just kind of like the Reaping Blade. I think in terms of just life prevention, Dread Scythe is a little bit better for this build because we are very, very aggressive, but it's just a huge resource hog. I think it's an amazing card. I think it's fantastic, and it's definitely worth considering if you have one, but I found that I like Galaxy Black just because it has a much lower barrier in terms of resource costs. So that is the weapons. I typically run Galaxy Black, sometimes Reaping Blade, but honestly not a ton. And then for our standard equipment loadout, it's pretty standard, right? I think it's pretty good. So first up we have Arcanite Skullcap. This is just one of the best defensive cards in the entire game. It's just a generic legendary equipment, has a defense of 1, and if you have less life than your opponent, it gains +1 and Arcane Barrier 3, and it has Battle Worn. It's kind of situational because, like I said, we want to be dealing a lot of damage to our opponents, so chances are they will have less life than us. But if we are on the back foot, it does give us kind of like, the amount of defense required to help us get back that tempo. But it's not a guaranteed defense, which is why this is one of the cards that I would swap out against a Kano player, for example, because they tend to do very combo-y turns where they just build up and try to get you all at once and not whittle you down. So it's a very good chance that your Arcanite Skullcap will not be active. So having another card with Arcane Barrier is really good against Kano. So this is definitely one of the cards that we would be swapping out against Kano, for example. Next up we have Grasp of the Arknight. This card is just really solid in general. There's a lot of little white specks. It's just really, really solid in general. It has 2 defense and Battle Worn, which means it can eventually block for 3. And as a once per turn action for 2 resources, create a Rune Chant token, and it costs additional 1 to activate for each Rune Chant you control. Well, we're not going to be running a lot of Rune Chant generators, so just being able to make Rune Chants with Grasp of the Arknight, if we have some extra stuff going on, is really sweet. And the Rune Chant damage can really add up. And what a Rune Chant is, just in case you don't know, it's an aura, and it says when you play an attack action card or attack with a weapon, destroy the Rune Chant and deal 1 arcane damage to the opposing hero. So just another way to get some damage in, diversify our damage sources, and it also blocks really well. It's not a must-have for the deck, so if you don't have this, because it is a legendary card, you can run something else, but I think it's a really, really good option, and being able to defend for 2 is super good. Next up we have Aether Ironweave. I think this card's actually legit amazing. Once again, it has a defense of 1 and Battle Worn. You can kind of see a theme here. Our equipment can actually, at least these 3, the helm, the gloves, and the chest, can all defend pretty well. And it has a really good action. It says, action, destroy Aether Ironweave, gain 2 resources. Activate this ability only if you've played an attack action card and a non-attack action card this turn. Go again. This is a really good way to gain 2 resources all at once on the turn when you need them to pop off and be able to play your 6 cards with Blood Debt to play your Eclipse. And we'll talk about Eclipse a little bit later, but being able to bank up these resources and play it when we really need to is super, super good, and it blocks really well, which is why I run this over something like the, pull it aside, over something like the Fiendel Spring Tunic, which gives you resources over time, and it could be a really good option. You know, if you have a tunic and you want to test it out, you can definitely run the tunic. But I'm finding that I like running the Aether Ironweave, and I just like running, you know, other alternatives to the tunic in general. I play with a lot of tunic. And then finally, we have the Snapdragon Scalers. This card's amazing. Just absolutely amazing. It's just a common card. It's really easy to get your hands on, and it's super good for our deck because we want to go wide. And what does this card do? It helps us go wide. Man, I got another little fuzz. Got a lot of fuzz on these. It says attack reaction, destroy Snapdragon Scalers, target attack action card with cost 1 or less gains, go again. Super good. Just really good. The only downside is it doesn't defend, but in my opinion, this is like the only, you know, leg option for Chain other than Arcane Barrier. If you wanted to do Arcane Barrier, you technically could get rid of all of this and have a full Arcane Barrier set if you wanted to. I think the one that's the most important to this deck is probably the Aether Ironweave, but you know, the Grasp of the Arcanite's just super good too. So just keep that in mind as we're talking about other stuff. The equipment loadout for this deck isn't as crucial as some other decks. So if you don't have like the legendaries, you have options. You definitely have options. You could make this into a pretty budget build because some of the best cards in this deck are just kind of like common cards, like Galaxy Black, Aether Ironweave, and the Snapdragon Scalers. So just keep that in mind as we go forward. So let's just start talking about the deck. We have Chain, Rune Chant, and Soul Shackle. We've already kind of talked about these. We'll talk about USUR the Soul Reaper. So USUR the Soul Reaper is a shadow token demon ally with 6 attack and 6 health, and it says allies can be attacked and can't be defended with, you know, defense with shields. They're destroyed when they have taken damage equal to their life. At the end of turn, heal all damage. So your opponent basically has to deal 6 damage to this in a single turn. For some heroes, it's going to be very easy. For some heroes, it's going to be very hard. So I think this is just super good. If you can get this out and just start attacking, it's really, really good. It says once per turn action for a cost of 0 attack. When USUR is attacking a hero with 1 or more cards in their soul, it has go again. It's so good. It's so good. So being able to attack with cards, you know, giving stuff go again with Chain, and then ending with a USUR is super good, or just attacking with USUR with go again anyway is super good. But it's a token, so you're like, how do I play USUR? Well, our playmat is a clue here. Let me go fetch the card. It's kind of at the end because I've sorted this according to card type, but we'll talk about the instance at the end, and this is an instant. So this is, here, let's just set it aside. We'll set it aside. This is Eclipse. So this is a legendary Chain specialization. It has a cost of 0 and 3 pitch, which is really good actually. 0 defense. It is an instant, so it does not take an action point to play, and you can play it anytime you have priority. And it says play Eclipse only if you have played 6 or more cards with Blood Debt this turn. If you have, you may play it from your banner zone. Create an USUR the Soul Reaper token. So, like I said at the beginning, this is an Eclipse build. Basically, we want to play 6 cards with Blood Debt and then finish it all off with an Eclipse. The strategy for playing Eclipse, if you draw it early, just pitch it. Just pitch it. It's pitches for 3. It's just really, really solid. And we're going to banish it eventually with Soul Shackle. So just keep pitching it until it ends up in your banner zone with Soul Shackle. And then you can play it from your banner zone on the turn that you need to go off. Super good. So just keep that in mind when we're talking about some other stuff. This, like I said, is also not a key part to the deck, though the deck is built to take advantage of this. If you don't have this, because it is a legendary card, don't worry too much, to be honest. A build without this in it that focuses just on attacking might be a little bit better. But I think we can do it, man. I think we can do it. I've only pulled it off once, but I think you can do it a little bit better with a lot more practice. So let's talk about some attack actions here, starting with the Shadow of USUR. I'm going to break these up into attack actions, and then non-attack actions, and then instants. About half the deck is attack actions and non-attack actions, just to take advantage of some of the effects we have going on here. So Shadow of USUR is one of the most key cards in this deck. It is a 0-cost card with 3 pitch value, amazing. Defense for 3, has 2 attack, and it says you may play it from your banner zone. We really want that. We really want cards that can play from our banner zone. If we have a card in our deck that can't be played from our banner zone, it better be really, really good. So just keep that in mind. It says, as an additional cost to play Shadow of Ursa, you may banish a card with Blood Debt from your hand. If you do, this card gains Go Again. So Shadow of Ursa gains Go Again, and it also has Blood Debt. So this is a 0-cost card that you can play from your banner zone that has a built-in way to get Go Again. That's exactly what you want for Eclipse, because you want to play a bunch of cards, well, 6 cards, with Go Again, and just having a big pool of them in your banner zone to play helps you facilitate that. Blood Debt, however, is a pretty tricky mechanic, because it says, at the beginning of your end phase, if Shadow of Ursa is in your banner zone, lose 1 life. So you would lose 1 life for every card with Blood Debt in your banner zone at the end of your turn. So you kind of want to be careful about balancing the cards in your banner zone with Blood Debt, and then just being able to play them and to pop off with Eclipse. Obviously, we're running 2 Shadows of Ursa. The foil is really nice. There we go, get that. Really, really reminds me of Berserk and Dark Souls. Shout out to the creator of Berserk, who recently passed away. Rest in peace, my dude. You are a legend. Anyway, let's continue on with Bounding Demagon. This is a pretty key card to the deck. It's a pretty, very simple card. So it costs 0, has an attack of 3 and a defense of 3. If you've played a non-attack action card this turn, once again, we want to have some non-attack actions in the deck, almost half. You may play Bounding Demagon from your banner zone. If you do, against +1. Also has Blood Debt. So very, very simple. 0-cost card that we can play from our banner zone, and it has Blood Debt. It's very simple, does everything we want to do. So we're running the reds. We're running the yellows, which is the same thing, but 2 attack. And then we are running the blues, which are the same thing, but 1 attack. So we have all 6 Bounding Demagons in this deck, and it's just a really, really key card. Next up, we have Riftbind. Riftbind's sweet. It doesn't cost 0 like the other ones, so it requires a little bit more resources, but it's still really good. So it's a 1-cost card. This is the red pitch version. Blocks for 3, has an attack of 3. You may play Riftbind from your banner zone. Once again, you're going to see this a lot. It has Blood Debt as well. If you do, against +X attack, where X is the number of non-attack action cards you have played this turn. This card is really, really good to play at the end of a turn where you've played a lot of non-attack action cards. And I think every non-attack action card in our deck has Go Again, has Go Again. So you can play a lot of them and end with a giant Riftbind. So Riftbind is fantastic. So we're running the reds, and we're also running the blues, because pitches really well, and just having that 1 attack isn't that big of a deal if you play a bunch of cards that are non-attacks, just to pump it up anyway. So yeah, running the reds and the blues. Just a really, really sweet card. Next up, we have Unhallowed Rites. Once again, this is a card with Blood Debt that you can play from your banner zone. Costs 1 to play. This is the red pitch version. It has an attack of 4, defense of 3, and it says, if you have played a non-attack action card this turn, once again, have a lot of non-attack actions in the deck, you may play Unhallowed Rites from your banner zone. And then, separate from that, you may put a non-attack action card with Blood Debt from your graveyard on the bottom of your deck. I believe the only one we have in our deck is Seeds of Agony, but it's a really good card, so you're going to want to put that on the bottom of your deck. It's really the only way we have to get cards with Blood Debt from our graveyard into our banner zone. It'll eventually, go to the bottom of our deck, and then we can banish it using a Soul Shackle later in the game. So really good. It's a 1-cost card, 4 attack that you can play from your banner zone. Super good. We are running just the red pitch version. Next up, we have Ghostly Visit. So Ghostly Visit is almost the exact same thing as Unhallowed Rites. So it's a 1-cost card, red pitch version, blocks for 3, attacks for 4, and it just says you may play it from your banner zone, and it has Blood Debt. The big difference is that Unhallowed Rites has the ability to put cards with Blood Debt, or non-attack actions with Blood Debt, on the bottom of our deck, but we have to play a non-attack action first to play it from the banner zone. This one, we can always play it from the banner zone. I would call Ghostly Visit a flex slot. This is a card that you can swap out for some other stuff if you want to. You don't have to, but if you want to, I like it because it attacks for 4, and 4 is a really good number in Flesh and Blood to attack with, because 3 tends to be the highest, defense most cards have, unless you're talking about really, specific defense reactions. So I like it. Also, it's a really pretty card, so it's got that too. Next up, we have Soul Reaping. Soul Reaping is amazing. This is another legendary chain specialization, but it's just a rare, It has the legendary mechanic, which means you can only have one of it in your deck, and only if chain is your hero. Same as Eclipse, you can only have one of it in your deck, and only if chain is your hero. So it costs 6 to play, but you can ignore that because we're never going to pay 6 for this. It pitches for red. Also, we're almost never going to pitch it either. Blocks for 3 and attacks for 6, and it says you may banish one or more cards from your hand rather than play Soul Reaping's cost. If you do, gain a resource for each card with Blood Debt banished this way. And then it says, while Soul Reaping is attacking a hero with one or more cards in their soul, it has Go Again. So it has this kind of built-in Go Again against Prism and Bolton, and it just attacks for 6 for basically for free. And the cost is to what? Banish a card in your hand. So you just banish a card that has Blood Debt that you can play from your banish zone, and then you get a resource because you banished a card with Blood Debt, and then you can play that card because it's in your banish zone, and you can play it from your banish zone. Soul Reaping's amazing. Soul Reaping is very, very good. One of the best cards in the deck. Fantastic. It's a shame we can only have one of them. That's probably why, though. Probably why. So next up, we have a couple generic cards. And like I said, the generic cards, to be in this deck, have to be really, really good. And it turns out, you know what? These cards are just really, really good. So the first one we have is Enlighten Strike. It says, as an additional cost to play Enlighten Strike, put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck, and you get to choose one. Draw a card, give it +2, or give it Go Again. And it has a base attack of 5 and a cost of 0. Also blocks for 3 and pitches for 1. Enlighten Strike is super good. I initially didn't have this in the deck, but I was just like, you should just run it in your deck. It's super good in this build, and it just hits a lot. It hits really hard. So we are running 2 of them. One of the most expensive cards in the deck, other than the legendaries. And then also, another really expensive card. We are running Command and Conquer. This is our most resource-intensive attack in the deck, but it's also one of the best cards in the entire game. So you should probably run it. So what does it do? It's a 2-cost card with 1 resource, 3 defense, and 6 attack. It says, defense reactions can't be played to Command and Conquer's Chain Link, which is absurd. And it says, if Command and Conquer hits a hero, destroy all cards in their arsenal, which is also absurd. Just keep in mind, with both Command and Conquer and Enlighten Strike, you cannot use Chain's ability to give these Go Again, because they are not shadow cards and they are not Runeblade cards. So just keep that in mind. These cards are best at the end of a long chain where you've already done stuff. At the end of a long string where you've already played a bunch of cards, giving, one of your other cards Go Again, and then finishing off with an E-Strike or a Command and Conquer. So just keep that in mind. You cannot give these Go Again with Chain. So those were our attack actions. Let's talk about some of our non-attack actions. We're going to start with some real spice. Shadow Puppetry. This is a way you can give Command and Conquer and Enlighten Strike Go Again. And it's really good when you do. It's really good when you do. So Shadow Puppetry is a 0-cost card. It's a red pitch card. It only has 2 defense. And it says, the next attack action card you play this turn gains +1, Go Again. And if it hits, look at the top card of your deck. You may banish it. And then this has Go Again. That's so gross. That is so gross. Giving like Command and Conquer Go Again. Giving your E-Strike Go Again. Like, just imagine this, right? You have a 3-card hand. You play Shadow Puppetry, and then you play your Enlighten Strike, and you choose the mode +2. You can even choose the draw card. That could be good too. But let's just say you choose the +2. That is a 7-attack Enlighten Strike. No. 8-attack Enlighten Strike. +2 from here and +1 from here. 8-attack Enlighten Strike. You've used no resources. You did have to put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck. And then, if it hits, and it probably will because it's coming in for 8, you can look at the top card of your deck and you may banish it. And what can you get from that? Well, you could get a Shadow of Ursa you could play for free. You could get a Bounding Demagon you can play for free from your banish zone. It's just really, really good. Peak synergy, one of the best cards in the deck, and really helps us get that go wide turn where you can play your Eclipse. Next up we have Mavrian Skies, another really good card. Does kind of the same thing as Shadow Puppetry, but not really. So this is a 0-cost card, has a defense of 2. The next Runeblade attack action card you play this turn gains Go Again, and if it hits, create 3 Runechant tokens. So this is our other way of getting some Runechant tokens, and it of course has Go Again. It's a very simple card. It's just a good way to give all of our cards, doesn't affect these ones here because they're not Runeblade cards, but all of these other cards gives them a way to get Go Again if they did not already have a way to get Go Again. And most of them don't, right? Your Unhallowed Rites, Demogons, Rift Binds, all of that kind of stuff. Gives them a way to get Go Again. So once again, you can facilitate that turn where you play Eclipse. And also, if they hit, they make some Runechant tokens. And it really incentivizes your opponents to block. And if they do, then they're going to be out cards in their hand and you're like starting to get the tempo swing. So we are running the reds, the yellows, which just make 2 Runechant tokens, and the blues. They're all the same thing. All they do is just make less tokens. It just makes a single Runechant token. I think they're all fantastic. Next up, we have Seeds of Agony. This is our 0-cost Shadow Runeblade action with Blood Debt. So this is a non-attack action with Blood Debt. It has Go Again, cost 0. Right there is amazing. A 0-cost card with Go Again and Blood Debt is exactly what you want. Is exactly what you want. And it says, you may play Seeds of Agony from your banner zone. The next attack action card with cost 2 or less you play this turn gains deal 1 arcane damage to target hero. And that affects any attack action card. So this does affect Command and Conquer and Enlightened Strike, which is super good. But it is, dependent on the cost there. I am running the full gambit. All 6 of these. The only difference is the red is cost 2 or less, the yellow is cost 1 or less, and then the blue is cost 0 or less. And we have a lot of 0-cost cards in the deck, like Enlightened Strike, like Bounding Demagon. So, it will see use. But just having 0 cost and Go Again with Blood Debt, we have 6 here. If we have all 6 of these in your graveyard, if you have all 6 of these in your banner zone, you can play them all and then Eclipse. That's kind of, magical Christmas land, but you can kind of see how not that hard it is to play Eclipse. Next up, we have our instants. We only have 2 instants in the deck other than Eclipse, and they're amazing, right? So this is Invert Existence. This is a 1-cost card with blue pitch, which is really good. Has no block, because instants typically don't have block. It says you can play it from your banner zone. Yo, there we go. Can play it from your banner zone. It also has Blood Debt. Once again, can play it from your banner zone. Blood Debt helps with Eclipse, and because it's an instant, it does not take an action point. So this is kind of like a free card you can play that helps you go towards Eclipse. And it says, banish up to 2 cards in opposing hero's graveyard. If an attack action card and a non-attack action card are banished this way, deal 2 arcane damage to that hero. That's super good. Not only are you dealing some damage, banishing some cards in their graveyard, and then helping fuel your Eclipse train, but it deals 2 arcane damage, and most players are going to assume that you're only going to be dealing 1 arcane damage with a Rune Blade, so it's going to be hard for them to defend this. So it's really good. We're running 2 of these. Pitches really well, does everything we want to do. Fantastic. And the final card in the deck, and possibly the best card in the entire deck, is Art of War. I've loved this card ever since it was spoiled. It's been in all of my, top lists when talking about Arcane Rising. This card is amazing, and I'm so glad it found a truly perfect home in Chain. It's also really good in Leviathan, and we'll talk about that when we get to our Leviathan deck tech. But Art of War is amazing. So, pitches for 2, it's a yellow pitch card, costs 1 to play, it's an instant, and it has 0 defense. It says, choose 2. You're going to pick 2 of these. Attack action cards you control gain 1 attack and 1 defense this turn. That's kind of the normal thing you pick with a lot of other decks, but that's probably not what we're going to pick at Chain, though you could. The next attack action card you play this turn gains Go Again. We are very likely going to pick that one. Until the end of turn, you may defend with attack action cards from Arsenal. It's kind of a weird one. I've literally never done it, but hey, it could come up. And the best one, you may banish an attack action card from your hand. If you do, draw 2 cards. This is insane. So for a resource, you get to banish a card from your hand, which, we can play them from the banish zone. So this is not a good example. This is not an attack action card. It has to be an attack action card. So you can banish a card from your hand. Say we banish this Bounding Demagon. Banish this from our hand. We draw 2 more cards. We can then play that Bounding Demagon from our banish zone if we had played a non-attack action, because it has that, that rider. But, you can play it from your banish zone. And then the next one we play has Go Again. That's insane. Even with some not great cards, this is nuts. This is absolutely nuts. Art of War is one of the best cards in the deck, dude. It's so good. It's hard to state how good this card is. If you don't already have copies of these, you should pick them up. They've already started to spike, but Get them while you can. I've gotten lucky and I've pulled a ton of these, but they are a very key card to this deck, like a must-have. If you're gonna pick any of the cards in this deck, like expensive cards, like, you know, like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna pick Art of War, or if I'm gonna buy Command and Conquers, or Enlightened Strikes, or what else is expensive in here? Some of the other ones, like Shadowverse is not that expensive. If you're gonna pick anyone in terms of deck functionality, Art of War is the best one. If you're talking about like just in terms of functionality with other decks, I mean, Command and Conquer is probably the one to get because it goes in like almost every deck imaginable. Kind of Easter egg too, but not as much. But yeah, that is my CHANE ECLIPSE BLITZ deck tech. I love this deck. All I want to do is summon my USUR boy and just go to town. Summon my demon pal. And we're going to do fun demony things. And we even have some old friends here, like these rune chants, and our old buddies, the very first legendary I ever pulled, the Grasp of the Arknight. Runeblade is my favorite class in the game, and I really, really like this build. I'll probably continue to tweak it as, you know, time goes on. Maybe take out less Mavrian Skies, maybe swap out the Ghostly Visits, but I think there's a lot of room here, and I think this deck is actually in a really good spot right now. CHANE is very, very powerful. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below what you think of this particular version of the deck. As you can see, I went for a pretty lean version of the deck, not very resource heavy. So I could see arguments for including something like Dread Scythe because my build isn't super resource heavy. So you could put something like Dread Scythe in to compensate for that. But I like just being really lean because I want to be greedy. And I want to do Soul Shackles and play a ton of cards in a single turn. The other thing to note is we do have 5 instants in this deck, which is relevant because a lot of cards care about attack actions or non-attack actions. And we've been pretty even with attack actions and non-attack actions, but just keep in mind the number of instants that we have. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Like I said at the top of the video, if you liked today's video, then, you know, like, comment, subscribe, check out my Patreon if you'd like to support me directly. I have tiers there where I give cards and booster packs back to you, but everyone gains access to the Rogues Gallery, the official Red Zone Rogue community Discord. We talk about decks there. We talk about Flesh and Blood, video games, all sorts of stuff. So thank you very much for watching once again, and I'll see you next time for some more Flesh and Blood content. Have a good one all. We'll see you later.